Alright everybody, we are about to jump right back into working with some triggers, and in this case we're going to be working with some doors. We're going to learn a little bit about kind of the hierarchy of components inside of a blueprint. We're going to learn how to move a pivot point around. We're going to learn how to do a good little bit, but also how to troubleshoot some of your issues. So let's start making our first door. Now, a lot of times people are going to just start looking for a door, right? And you can do that pretty easy right here in the content browser. If I want to, I'll just type in door, and we have some starter content right here. Here's a door. Nice, that's handy. And we want to have this work so it covers up the front of our house here. So let's go ahead and move a few things out of the way. I'm just going to hold down shift to select all of these, and I'm just going to move them to the back. Okay, they'll be out back here. Whenever we want to come get them, we can just go find them there. Now we have our little door, and it does look a little small, but let's see. Let's kind of match it up here, and we can scale it. So we'll go over here into the details for our door. A couple things to look at. We have our location, we have our rotation. Right now it's 0, 0, 0. When we do rotate this one has its hinge point, or its pivot point right here on the edge where it should be, you know, on the opposite side of where the doorknob is. And we know it's going to pivot around our z-axis. That's pointing straight up there. Having the pivot point on the edge of a door is pretty easy to make it hinge or slide open or do whatever you need to. With other things, you might want to have it in the middle, or you might decide you want it to pivot like straight in the center of the mesh. And if you wanted to do that, you can. You just hold down Alt, and then you have to have a mouse for this. You have to have a 3-button mouse with the middle button or a scroll wheel button in the middle. And then what you can do is just click right where you want it to be, and it'll move to that spot, right? And if you're just like, you know, I don't know if I like that, just click on something else and then come back to it. It'll put it right back where it was, right? And if you really need to set it where it's supposed to be, you can go in, hold down Alt, click where you want it to go, and then right click on that point, go down here to pivot, and then you can set as pivot offset, and then it'll just save it as that pivot for that particular mesh whenever you go back to use it again. And you know, if that's something you need, it's a nice little tool to know where it's at. So in this case, we want to scale this one up a good bit, and I think we're just going to go into our scaling widget right here. You can either use R or just click on it in the menu. We're going to expand this out a good bit. Since it is just going to the right, it does make it a little bit easier. I can just expand it all the way. Let's see. We're a little bit off on our construction here, but that's okay. Even looks like maybe our rotation is a little bit off. There we go. Snapped right in. And looks like we're in a pretty good spot now. Let's just scale it up to the top. All right, we got a big old door. That's cool. All right, and I want to change this thing. I don't want people to be able to see through this. So I'm going to change the glass out for some black floor. Yeah, now you can't see through. You can't tell what I'm doing in there now. All right, so let's go ahead and test this out. Now we have everything the way we like it. Let's see, we are colliding with our walls, and then we go right through our door. That's not going to be great. So we want to make sure that later on, whenever we have keys and certain locks and things like that we want to impose on our door, that people can't go through them. And so we have to fix that. Some of these assets may have come in without a collision on them. So even though we have our collision settings set over here to say, hey, you know, don't let things through. Well, it might just be set to, you know, respond to something passing through it, but it won't actually collide with us without a collider. So what we want to do is just right click on that static mesh. This is one we're using, and we're going to edit right here under common. Okay. Once we go in here, this is a static mesh editor inside of UE4, and the controls are the same. You use the right mouse button to allow yourself to move around, and you can use A, W, S, D, and Q and E to move around the same space, just like you would in the original editor for your game. And you can see that there's not really anything on here we can click on. I mean, there's some little yellow vertices that we can see when we click on that door, but those aren't colliders. Let's give this thing a collider. You can see here collisions are supposed to be green, if you can see that from there. And we're going to go up here to collisions, and we're going to add a simplified box collision. There we go. Now we have a green line around us. Those are our colliders. Okay, now once we have that box collision on there, we're just going to go up here to save, and once we've done that, we should be able to use this. So let's go back in and test it out. Okay, so let's see, we flip around over here, and bam, yep, we cannot go through that door anymore. That's good. That's exactly what we wanted. All right, so let's turn this door into a blueprint. Now, there's a couple different ways you can approach this. You need to think about what you want your actor to be able to do. In this case, our door needs to swing open, okay? And you also need to keep in mind a few things about how the program actually works. So if this is going to swing open, we really want this to open and then close, and we don't really want it to keep chasing it or anything like that. We don't want it to keep going in a circle as it hinges around. We just want it to open 90 degrees and then close in that same 90-degree arc that it went out, come back that way, right? Easy enough. Let's just kind of keep that in mind as we're going through this. So to turn this door into a blueprint, we just highlight the door, we select the door, we go up here to blueprints, there's a little drop down right there, and we convert selection to blueprint class. Okay. Now we can also create a new empty blueprint. We go in here to actor, we hit actor, and let's call this trigger door. Okay, I'll just hit OK. Oh, I'm crazy. I put it in the wrong one. We want it to go into our content folder, but yeah, we want it to go right here, trigger door. All right, and it probably won't like that because, yeah, we can't have a space. I'm an idiot. All right, there we go. All right, so we have it. Now this just made a blank event graph. There's nothing in here. I just wanted to kind of show you that we're going to use this here in just a second. Don't worry. But then we don't have our door already in here. We've already got this thing set where we want it. So let's turn this one into a blueprint. We're going to go up here. We're going to hit the drop down, and we're going to convert selection to blueprint class. Here we go. All right, this is more what we're looking for. The blueprint name is going to be, I want to call it BP underscore, well, let's say static mesh underscore trigger door. So we built this whole thing from the static mesh. It's going to be in our game path, so that's our content folder, and it is a static mesh that we're building this on. It's going to be based off of an actor, so I think we're in good shape. Let's go ahead and hit select. And let's go back, make sure it's, yep, there's our trigger door right there. Okay, we have our trigger door here that we haven't fully built out, but then we also have this one. So this is going to be the one that we use. In fact, I'm going to change it right now, so you know that this thing, I want to rename this. This one is our BP trigger door, because that's what we started off with, and then this one is our static mesh trigger door right here. So we're both gonna end up with a blueprint on them, pretty much the same kind of code, but they are gonna act differently. Okay, so let's start off with our trigger door here that started off with the static mesh. There we are, and we see our door in there. That's handy. And we want to add in a collision, just like our light. We're going to use a box collision, and that's just so we can make sure that we can control where the collider is supposed to go. Okay, we're going to use our scale widget right there using R, and I want to expand this out some more so when you walk up to it, it doesn't just keep, trying to bump into you to open. So we'll extend that out a good bit so when you walk up, it swings open. Okay. And we want to make sure that the collisions on this one are set for trigger. So we're going to go down into collisions. We have collision presets here. We're going to set this one for trigger, and you see how some of these things change in here. Mostly getting overlap events, just so we can get information out of that. Okay, we'll go ahead and compile. And let's see, we're going to delete all of these things. Now, just like before, we didn't need the event tick, we didn't need the begin play, we didn't need those things because it's not what we're looking for functionality-wise with this. Now, one thing we do need to identify with, though, is this static mesh right here, and then this box. Okay, now I'm going to pause here for just a second because I want to go over to the BP trigger door, and I want to take a look at a few things here. Now, right now, we just have a default scenery, and we're going to keep that. But then we need to add a door, so we need a static mesh, and that static mesh is going to be a door, just like we have on the other one. We're going to make it look just a little bit different. So where we change out the glass for this floor material, I'm going to put in something else that we can see pretty easily that it is a different door. Okay, so we have that there. Let's take a look. Okay, yeah, nice bright blue door there. Gonna hit compile. We're also going to need a trigger space, so we're going to use a box collision for that as well. Now we're going to arrange this in the exact same way. We're going to set it up with the exact same code, and then we're going to see how everything responds. Okay, it is going to be different, and this is going to help you figure out some issues later on with all of your kind of work that you're doing. Okay, go ahead and hit compile. All right, so back here into our static mesh trigger door. Okay, and we have our BP trigger door. They're both set up pretty much the same way. Okay, and we're just going to do our code. In fact, I should be able to take this code and probably take it over to the other one without too much trouble, make it work. All right, so here's where we're going to have something a little bit same. Okay, we want to highlight our box trigger. We want to highlight our collider there. Right click. We're going to go to begin overlap. If I can type. Okay. Add on component begin overlap. Zoom in here. We want to make sure that the thing we're overlapping with is the first person character. So we're going to cast to first person character. That means casting to something. We're trying to get its identity, get some information from it, make sure that it is the thing we want to interact with. That's casting. Okay, and then from here we're going to put this over to a new node that you guys haven't seen yet. It's called a timeline. So we're going to add a timeline. You could just type in timeline, obviously, but hey, you can go the long way too. All right, for this is going to be the thing that animates the door to open and close. And that's basically the same idea as a timeline in animation. We're going to have it go through a series of values to make it look like it's moving on its own. And for this, we should call this, since this is going to be a hinge door that swings open, we're going to call this swing open. Okay, and take a look here. We have it where we can control where it plays. We'll play from start, stop, reverse, reverse from the end, set to a new time, give it a new time here. Update is going to be where all the information is coming out that's going to step us through this thing to make it look like we're moving this on its own. And then finished is going to be where we can actually see where it's done. Like if we need to know, okay, this animation finished, we can kick something out here. And then we're going to get some information from this direction here. If we decide to use it, we're actually going to make our own. So let's just double click on this. On that timeline, you'll end up in this space. This is a timeline editor. And for this, we can add in different tracks. We can add in float tracks, multiple float tracks. This is going to be a single float value that we can move up and down and change over and over again. This vector, add vector track right here, this actually has X, Y, and Z instead of just one number that it's manipulating and changing, or one value that it keeps changing. This has 3 values, and they're going to be pushing things into the X, Y, and Z axis, obviously. We don't really have to have a vector for this, so what I'll probably do is just delete that. We're going to make a float track. Okay, this one's we're going to call it swing. If for some reason you get in here and you weren't able to change this when you wanted to, you can just right click on it and hit rename. So to make a keyframe on the timeline, what we can do is we hold down Shift and you can click on the timeline, or you can right click on the timeline. It'll give you an option to add key to curve float right there. Okay, either way works just fine. Now we want this door to open up 9 degrees. So right now we're seeing the time from 0 to 1 second right here. And then we also have the value, and the value is being measured on the left side. So for this, I'm going to set it for 90. We want it to go out 90 degrees. This is a float, so could be any numbers. We could be talking about how fast we want this thing to go. We could be talking about the distance we want this thing to go. But in this case, we're going to be using this to talk about how many degrees we're going to be going over. So the numbers are basically the same. It just depends on how you plug them in. Okay, so we have that set for the first second. And also the length of this, we're not going to go past a second, so we don't really have to have it at 5 seconds. So we're going to switch this back to 1. We want to see where all the values are, so we can go right here to zoom to fit. on both of these. We can see everything looks pretty good. I'm going to start the time at 0, make sure the value is 0. That looks good. Looks good. Okay, yeah, our timeline looks nice. All right, now this is going to set the relative location of the static mesh. So we're going, or I'm sorry, set the relative rotation. So let's go in here and do set relative rotation. And the reason we want relative rotation and not like world rotation is that we don't want it to rotate around these coordinates based on where it is in the world. We want it to rotate around where it's at itself. Okay, so if we let it rotate at 0, 0, 0, it would move to the middle of the map and try and rotate around there. In this case, relative means it's going to rotate right where it's at. Like all these other values are going to stay the same. So you'll notice our swing that we made with our timeline is a float. It's green. And the thing we have to plug it into is not. However, this is something we can split out. If you see 3 values here, this is called an enum. We can, or a struct, sorry, this is a struct. In fact, you'll see as we right click on this, it'll say split struct pin. What a struct is something that has multiple values, but it's multiple variable values, and it's all kept together. So we can split that out, and we can type in the swing into Z. Z is the upward pointing axis, and that's what we're going to hinge this whole thing around, is that. So let's see, everything looks pretty good, and we know we're going to need it to close, so we might as well build that other side as well. So let's do that right now. We're going to do highlight the box. We're going to do end overlap. Okay, add on component begin end overlap. We're going to do a real quick Control W to copy paste this one for our cast a first person character. Drag it into the execution pin. Other actor goes into the object that we're looking for, and then this goes up into our reverse. We want it to go back the way it was. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit compile. That's all of our code that we need. Okay, now I'm going to copy this. I'm going to highlight it, just drag across and highlight it. Do Control C. I'm going to go over to our BP trigger door, into the event graph. Get rid of these, we don't need them. And let's see how well this copies over. I'm going to just Control V right there. Okay. All right. Let's just see. All right. May work. Compile. Now, obviously, we're going to have some issues, but not that many. Really, it just has an issue with this static mesh component right here. And what we can do is drag this static mesh out and tie it right into that target. Otherwise, it looks like the box is working fine because we didn't change the name here, and the name is box here. As long as we had these set up as the same name on both, the copy and paste should work just fine. If you don't, you can always just make these changes like we did. So I'm going to do this, compile everything, looks good. I'm going to bring in our 2 different doors. Okay, so we got our BP trigger door right there. Oops, sorry, there's our BP trigger door right there. And then we have our big SM trigger door. This is the one made from the static mesh. Let's test these out and see how they do. Okay, Alt P, fire that thing. All right, so here we go up to our door. It's not working. Okay, well, let's try our other one. See how that one. Oh, okay, seems to be working okay. All right, yeah, this one's working. Oh, wait a second, something weird's going on here. Okay, see how it's not quite. I think what's going to help us out here, I think one thing that we got from that message log, first person, let's take a look at this. Movable. Uh-oh, something's not movable. So it looks like our static mesh component is 0. Let's take a look at our doors here real quick. This one's moving, so don't think that's an issue. Looks like our big door wasn't set to be movable. So let's check it out. Oh, yeah, it's static. Let's set it to movable. All right, I bet you it'll work a little bit better now. Well, let's see. Let's go ahead and hit Alt P, and let's see where we're at. Okay, we go to our. Okay, now it does open, but it's kind of twitching, right? And it seems to want to follow us around here. All right, let's see. There it is. Oh, it's acting really strange. Okay, let's try this one again. This one is acting really odd too. All right, I think what we need to do is see what our trigger volumes are doing. Okay, so let's go in here. This box is not seen currently, so we just go down to render. Let's see, let's get rid of these collisions, and let's see. There we go. Rendering. Okay, hidden in game. I want to uncheck that. Now I can see it. Let's go to our BP trigger door. This should be the one that's off to the side in blue. Let's go to the box on that one. And on rendering, we want that to be visible too. So I'm going to go ahead and hit compile. And let's see what these things are doing. Okay. All right, so go up to our first door. Go up here. Oh, well, the trigger volume is moving with the door. So that's why we're getting this kind of weird thing going on here. It looks like the same thing is happening with this one. Okay, that's not really what we want. We don't really want the trigger volume to move with the door, right? That doesn't help us out. So let's go to our BP trigger door first. Now the issue we're seeing is that the box is built into the static mesh. Like you can see, if we hit this little drop down, that's the only way we see the box. So that's why the box is moving with the static mesh on this one. So we're going to push this up, and now the static mesh and the box are on the same hierarchy. They're in the same space. So that should fix that problem. Let's check it out. Let's see what we got here. Now I'm just going to go surpass that one right there, and we'll go up to our door. Hey, it opens, and we walk through the space. We out of it. All right. Hey, this is exactly what we're looking for. That's what we want. Okay, now let's take a look at the other trigger door. Now on this one, we have a little bit of a problem because our static mesh is, like here, the static mesh is under a scene root. That means we have something that the door can move completely separate of what's actually centering the actor. So all these things could move if we wanted to, but on this one, well, this one can move, but our box really can't go anywhere. Like it can't become the scene root. And so I think on this one we may be stuck. So the nice thing about this though is that this could kind of work into a possible game mechanic for you. So if you wanted to be able to go in here, let's go ahead and I'm just going to pull this door out. Here we are. So if you wanted a player to have to run up against something and like stay with it to keep it open, see, that might work well for what you're trying to do. So as you can see, maybe a wall is going to turn when you get into that trigger volume, and then when you walk out of it, it closes, right? So maybe a hidden passage or something like that. So you learn to walk in that space, and then as soon as you're out of it, it just goes back to the way it was. So this is not really how we want our doors to usually work. We want them to more work like this, right? Where we walk up to them, they open and close, stay where they're at, no matter where you're at. It always stays in the same space. So just something to keep in mind as you're building these things or as you're building any future projects. The hierarchy of these elements is important. And if you are going to make a blueprint out of one of these static meshes, you have to understand that is going to become the scene root. So if it's something that needs to move, it's probably better if you have it as a blueprint first, where you go in, you right click in here, you make a blueprint class and an actor. If you're just adding something on and it turns on lights, or it's sending event dispatchers or line traces, some other things we're going to be talking about a little bit later on, it's probably fine. But if it's something that needs to move, then having it as the scene root, which is what happens whenever you convert a static mesh into a blueprint, that's going to cause you some issues. Okay, so check your assignment that goes along with these doors. I believe you have to make some doors here and maybe even get a little creative and make something on your own. And let's see what you make.